Welcome to session 8. Lesson 8, the final lesson. You've made it through Basic Chaplaincy 101, and I am so thrilled to be able to not only take this last lesson with you, but to be able to encourage you that everything you've done right here is just setting the foundation for you to be able to do great things. What this lesson is, it's a simple lesson. It's not as long as the one in lesson 7, but this one is talking about how do you evaluate when you begin to work with people at a variety of different levels. How do you begin to evaluate where they are, and most importantly, what they're going to need? There's 3 elements that I'm going to cover just briefly in this particular lesson as a closeout. But the first one I want to talk about is confidentiality. Now, in the midst of what we do here in the States, there are a variety of different rules and regulations that you need to know about. When someone speaks to you, if you are an ordained member of the clergy, you have a type of confidentiality, a clergy confidentiality, that means that anything that that person says to you within specific state limits and laws is basically held within you. You can't divulge that. If an attorney comes to you and says, hey, we're going to subpoena you because of what that person says, if it was in a counseling situation and it doesn't fall out as far as the state requirements and things that you have to report, anything that deals with abuse and things of that nature, we're under authority to be able to report that because we have to stop any type of harm. Only in the military does a chaplain have extreme confidentiality, and that means whatever is said to the chaplain, whatever is said to the chaplain, stays with the chaplain. Now, if you're not in the military, you're subject to the state and the laws that are of the land itself. So make sure that wherever you're going to be serving as a chaplain, and as well as the institutions that you're part of, make sure you know their regulations and requirements. But confidentiality is something that's very important for you as a chaplain, because if someone shares something to you, then that allows you to be able to make sure that you're protecting what is said to them. You're going to keep it what we call close hold. If I'm going to entrust you with something that's going to be very sensitive to my needs and my nature, I don't need to find it tomorrow on the 5 o'clock news, or worse, Betty Sue saying, listen, I'm so sorry I heard about the situation you're in. What happens sometimes in churches, it starts out with a prayer request saying, I need us to pray for, and that usually just breaks the confidentiality. Let's not do that. As a chaplain, you need to be able to build that bank of trust for people to be able to talk to you and to make sure that what they say to you stays with you. What was always amazing to me, not only as a chaplain but as a pastor of a church, is that when people would come to me for counseling, and we would go through different things, issues and things of that nature, is that when this particular or different people would see my wife, they would go up to my wife and they would begin to talk to her about that situation like she knew about it. And all the time she had to stop them and say, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. And many people sadly just assumed, oh, well, I just assumed that your husband kind of told you about the situation you're in. And she made it very emphatic. What my husband does in counseling stays with him. He tells me nothing. Chaplain, listen to me. That's the way it should be. That keeps everything within you. Now, will it be that different situations you need to be able to talk with your spouse about? You can do that without going into details and situations and things about things that you may be going through, feelings that you have. Good example for me when I was in Iraq for a year, and where we saw death and destruction as the 10th Combat Hospital Support Chaplain, command chaplain for the Baghdad ER. I didn't have to go into details with my wife about everything I saw and things that was there, but she knew when I had a hard day. And that was all that she needed to know. She knew how to pray for me and how to take care of me. As a chaplain, confidentiality is huge. People are going to be skeptical of sharing anything with you first until you have proven that you are that type of vault that when it's shut, what's there stays inside. So confidentiality is very huge. Make sure you know the state requirements of that. There's also another thing. It's called confidence. Now, when you talk about confidence, it's making sure that you're going to be able to meet a person right where they are and to be able to minister to them holistically, body, mind, and spirit. Think about it just for a second. Let's talk about taking care of a person. When you're evaluating them, I want you to go through this Trinity type of evaluation of body, mind, and spirit. Start asking yourself first, physically, what is it that this person needs? When you're evaluating somebody and the circumstance that they're in and the situation that they find themselves in, find out first off what is happening physically. Food, clothing, shelter, things that they need. It's hard to talk to someone about the loving warmth of Jesus' love when they're shivering in a 30-degree environment without a jacket. I need us to have a little bit more common sense. Begin to look first at the physical nature and need of that person. Meet their need first. A person that is first fed by physical food will then start listening to you that talk about the living water and bread of life. Because when a physical need is taken care of, they are now in a position to be able to hear and what's going to happen. So that's the physical. What about the body and the mind? What happens emotionally? Well, begin to start looking at them emotionally. You can start looking at about the different situations they're going through, maybe some of the emotions that they're going through. Is it loss? Is it grief? Is it guilt? Is it depression? Is it a type of self-worth that they're focused on? Is it a family issue? Is it a past sin? Is it a present problem? Evaluate where they are emotionally and how they're handling this in the area of their coping mechanisms. You know how you do this? Simply ask them, so how are you coping with this? I guarantee you a lot of people will be very, very honest. And even those that say, oh, I'm just handling it, give them a moment, because there's a difference of them handling the situation and that situation handling them. So you got body and mind. Lastly is about spirit. Evaluate them in reference to their spiritual condition. Ultimately, it comes right down to this. Remember, when you begin to share, meet them at their need, and if possible, end with the gospel. Because we realize that in our life, there's a lot of things that we can take care of us physically. There are things that we can start focusing our mind on emotionally. But until our heart is truly right, all we have is a life with a little L. That little L just means that it's a heartbeat. But a big L means that I've come to know the one who gave me the heart. It allows you to be able to assess them and give them what they need in order for them to grow a harvest of a fruit-filled life. What is that fruit-filled life? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, meekness, self-control. A lot of things by which we now have that you can now bring to them. The most important is hope, and that hope is found in our faith. So when you begin to evaluate people, remember, confidentiality is huge. You be able to bring to them now the confidence of where you're going to make sure that their needs are met, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But then when there's one last thing I want you to consider, and it is referring. Now, referring means that you're in a situation to where you know it is beyond your capabilities. You may be able to take care of some physical things. You may be able to help gravitate in reference to the spiritual, but if there are some deeper emotional needs, post-traumatic stress syndrome and some of the things that go through that, different traumas in a person's life, depths of depression, things that are also a part of the lifestyles that sometimes that begin to affect a person negatively, drug, alcohol abuse, the different things of that nature. When you realize that it is beyond your capability, refer. There's nothing that says that a chaplain has to handle and fix everything. Matter of fact, as I've said it multiple times through this training, you're not there to fix. You're simply there to point them toward the right mechanism that's going to help them in their time of need. Ultimately, it's our faith, but it's helping them to get through the situations and the circumstances, and sometimes professional help is a part of that. What does that mean for us as a chaplain? Make sure that you've got a good list of areas that you can refer them to. Counselors, doctors, establishments, whatever that may be, make sure that you have a list that you can now refer them to with confidence. That doesn't mean that you're going to look in the yellow pages and say, oh, here's something, or Google it and say, well, this is somebody close by. Make sure you know the person. I have a good friend that is a counselor in this area, and when I'm meeting with someone, when I realize, okay, now they've gone beyond what I can do for them, I will then refer them to my friend. because he has a staff and a team that's able to take care of a multitude of issues, and they could do it professionally, and they have time. Remember, as a chaplain, it's also about time. If you have one person and you're seeing that person an hour every single week, okay, well, how many people can you then see? Because it starts to multiply after a while. You may meet with them and say, I'm going to meet with you about 3 times, and then we'll reevaluate what happened, and that's okay. But remember, if you're going to be a counseling chaplain, then that's what you do. But a variety of us are not just counseling chaplains, we're chaplains for a lot of other organizations that have a multitude of other tasks and needs and responsibilities. Make sure that you marry your time with the responsibility that you've been charged with, and again, know your limitations. Don't ever take someone that you yourself have not been able to go. That's training, education, and certification. Help them, but then refer to them who they need to be and where they need to go. Always be ready to refer. Develop the referral list. Let me go through these very quickly. Number 3 is make sure that you know when to refer. What is that time frame? Is it the second or the third time that you've met with them? And then refer with them in confidence, making sure that you know the person that you are referring them to. Again, the community resources that you may have around you may not just be in your community, may be outside of it, but know what you have right in your back door. Here in my area, there is a multitude of places that we can tap into for food and for shelter and for emergency needs, but I know them here. It's also important for me to know what's happening in the surrounding areas, because sometimes people will meet you that don't live close to you. Have a good list. Most importantly, have a great resource that you can tap them into. You don't have to know all the answers. Just know the people who do. Now, let me conclude with this. In your religious community, they are a huge reference and a resource for you. Religious diversity makes it necessary to know not just about your particular religious background, but also the backgrounds of others. Where different churches or synagogues or mosques may be, locations that they can be able to be a part of according to their faith, making sure that you're able to connect them with the people that are part of their culture, their religious diversity, or whatever may be needed in their life. Because it's not just referring them to a counselor, it may be referring them to their particular faith leader. Whatever it may be, making sure that you, if you can't perform, make sure that you're there to provide. Now, a lot of different things when we look at, but let me simply wrap it all up into this way. What you do as a chaplain is going to be able to bring such an incredible gift into a situation, into a person's life, not just when they are in need of life, but when they're just simply going through life, because I guarantee you, life always happens. Maybe going along well, but at some point in time, something happens, and they need to make sure that they have something they can draw from to help put their lives back together when things come apart. Let me close with this thought as we conclude this training together. As we begin to wrap up all of this training, I want to congratulate you for finishing strong. Matter of fact, that's the best part about the chaplaincy. It's not just when you begin, it's how you finish. And I want to encourage you, as you take these lessons, begin to build upon it and allow them to add to your life. But here's something I also want to encourage you to do. It's not just about you being the only chaplain. Find other chaplains that you are able to work with and become a stronger force because of that. Because one person with another person develops a synergy that allows you to do 2 and 3 and 4 times more than what you could possibly do. It is allowing you to come together. And as a chaplain, it's not just about what you alone can do. Bring people around you and make sure that you're able to do it effectively. That's why I love the military and the chaplains that I engage with. That's why I love the chaplains here in the variety of areas around me with our first responders, with our hospitals, because when we come together, we're learning how to encourage one another, because truly, as iron sharpens iron, really we will be able to sharpen one another and be stronger together. Unity is huge, and it's also crucial. Let me close with this thought. Because of the power in that picture of that unity of everything that you bring to work with other chaplains, it was likened unto a man that he had 7 sons. The problem with these 7 sons is, from the oldest to the youngest, they would fight constantly with each other. They would begin to feud and fuss and fight and things of that nature in their life, and they began to polarize themselves. They began to pull away and become individuals all by themselves, and that began to concern the dad a lot. And so the dad had an idea. He had his 7 sons. He called them in front. He says, sons, I want each one of you to go outside, and I want you to get a switch. Now, for those of you that are old enough to know what a switch is, you've already got that cold chill that just kind of went through you. Wait for me, wait for the rest of the story. Because when the guys came back in, the dad had them collect all 7 of the branches together, and he tied them with some twine. And then he handed that bundle to the youngest of the 7 brothers. And he says, okay, break the twine, break that bundle. Try as he might, he couldn't do it. And he told her, he says, well, just pass it to your next brother. Okay, just pass it to all the way up to the oldest and the strongest. And he wasn't able to break the bundle. No, the father took the bundle away, unwrapped it, and then gave each one of them their switch back. And then he says, okay, now break the switch. And without even a moment's hesitation, boop, it was broken in half. Father looked at the sons as the sons are looking at the broken stick in their hand and trying to figure out what was this about. Father says, what you've just learned today is a very powerful, powerful lesson. If you try to stand alone in your life, you're going to be easily broken because you're vulnerable. But when you stand with others, you not only become unbreakable, you become unbeatable. I encourage you as chaplains, join together. Take the lessons that you've learned, take the life that you're beginning to develop, the passion that you're beginning to fuel, and the care by which you express, and do that for those around you, and join with other chaplains so that they can do it with you. Together, we can do more than just change a situation. Together, we can change a world. I invite you to be a part of that change. I'm Dr. Dan Milbrooks, and thank you for being a part of Chaplaincy Training 101. Look for the other ones that are going to be coming out later.